Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something really important in Indian governance, and it's a must-know for anyone eyeing the UPSC exams. The Finance Commission.
Definitely a crucial topic.
Whether you're a future civil servant or just want to grasp how India's money works, this one's for you. We're going to break down what this commission is, why it matters, and how it all operates.
Sounds good.
We've got excerpts from a text all about the Finance Commission. It's got some fascinating details.
Oh yeah, like what?
Did you know the very first Finance Commission was set up way back in 1951, right after India became a republic?
Wow, right from the beginning. Shows how important it's been shaping India's finances.
So first things first, what exactly is this Finance Commission? Can you break it down for those of us who aren't finance experts?
Sure. The Finance Commission, it's a quasi-judicial body, meaning it has some legal authority and operates pretty independently.
Okay.
Its job is to handle the financial relationship between the central government and the states, and it's all laid out in Article 280 of the Constitution.
Quasi-judicial, that's a fancy term. So it's like a court, but for money.
Exactly. It can investigate, gather evidence, make recommendations, just like a court, but focused on the money stuff between the central government and the states.
So who are the people making these big money decisions?
Yeah.
Is it a room full of economists?
Well, you definitely need economic experts, but it's a pretty diverse group. It's made up of a chairman and 4 members appointed by the president.
How long do they get to be on the commission?
They serve for 5 years. Every 5 years, there's a new finance commission appointed.
5 years to sort out all the money stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of background do you need to even get on this team?
That's a good question. Parliament actually sets the specific qualifications.
Okay.
The goal is to get a team with a wide range of expertise. Like, the chairman needs a strong background in public affairs, and the other members should specialize in areas like law, finance, economics, and administration.
So it's not just about being good with numbers. You need to understand the government, the law, and India's economy. Makes sense. But what about their daily work? What does the Finance Commission actually do?
Well, they're mainly responsible for making sure there's a fair distribution of money between the central government and the states.
So they decide who gets what piece of the financial pie.
Exactly. And to do this, they have 4 key functions.
Tell me more.
First, they decide how to split the divisible pool of tax revenue.
Hold on, divisible pool.
Yeah.
Is that just a fancy term for all the taxes the government collects?
Yeah, basically. It's the part of tax revenue that the central government shares with the states.
I see.
The Finance Commission figures out what percentage goes to the central government and how much each state gets.
That's a big responsibility. They're deciding how much financial power each state has.
It is a big responsibility. They look at tons of factors like population, income levels, geographical size, and even how well a state is managing its own finances.
So it's not just a random allocation.
No, not at all.
What's the second function then?
The second is figuring out the rules for grants and aid.
Like when the central government gives states extra money for specific projects.
Exactly. The Finance Commission sets the guidelines for how those grants are given out.
So they're deciding which states get extra funding and how much for certain projects. Got it. What else?
Third, they work on strengthening the finances of local governments like the panchayats and municipalities.
So they look out for the smaller guys too.
They do. They recommend ways to make sure even the smallest parts of the government have the funds to work properly and provide services.
That's great. And the fourth?
The fourth is like a catch-all. It's any other money-related matter that the president might ask them to look into.
So like a financial SWAT team.
Haha, that's one way to put it. It gives them the power to deal with new financial issues and keep the whole system stable.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility. But here's a question. When the Finance Commission makes all these recommendations, does the government actually have to listen to them?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Their recommendations are super important, but they're technically advisory, not legally binding.
So the government can choose to ignore them.
They could, but it's not that simple. Remember, the Finance Commission is created by the Constitution, and their job is to keep things fair and stable for the whole country.
Right. In fact, I was just reading from our source material, and it says, since the Finance Commission is a constitutional body expected to be quasi-judicial, its recommendations should not be turned down by the government of India unless there are very compelling reasons.
Exactly. That was said by Dr. P.V. Rajamanar, chairman of the 4th Finance Commission. He was making it clear that the government should really take those recommendations seriously.
Makes sense. You've got this expert group that's carefully studied the country's finances. The government better have a good reason if they want to go against their advice. But hold on. Our source mentions something else that adds another layer of complexity: the historical overlap with the Planning Commission.
Oh yeah, there was a time when both were working at the same time, and that definitely created some interesting dynamics.
Two groups dealing with financial planning. Sounds like a recipe for conflict.
You're not wrong. The Planning Commission, which was not based in the Constitution, also had a big role in deciding how money was spent on development projects.
So you had the Finance Commission focused on fairness and balance based on the Constitution, and then the Planning Commission, created by the government and focused on specific projects.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Sounds like there had to be some tension.
There was potential for conflict, especially when it came to who had the final say on money matters. The Planning Commission, being closer to the government, often had more sway. But the Finance Commission, with its constitutional backing and focus on fair distribution, also held a lot of authority.
A delicate dance between two powerful groups. But didn't the Planning Commission get disbanded eventually?
It did. In 2015, it was replaced by Niti Aayog, which stands for National Institution for Transforming India.
Niti Aayog, I've heard of that. What's their role?
It's more like a think tank and advisor focused on working together, long-term planning, and making policy suggestions. It's designed to be less top-down than the Planning Commission.
So less about giving orders, more about collaboration.
Yeah, that's the idea.
With the Planning Commission gone, does the Finance Commission have even more power now?
It definitely changes things. With Niti Aayog taking on a more advisory role, the Finance Commission becomes even more important in shaping how India's finances are shared between the central government and the states.
Okay, so we've covered the history and the key players. But let's step back for a moment. India's had 14 finance commissions since independence. That's quite a legacy.
Absolutely. Each one has helped shape India's financial landscape. They reflect how the country's priorities and challenges have changed over time.
Any standout commissions? Any landmark decisions that have really shaped the way things are done today?
Definitely a few worth mentioning. For instance, the 11th Finance Commission, led by A.M. Khusro, is known for pushing for greater fiscal discipline and transparency in state finances. It was a major step towards responsible financial management at the state level.
Wow, so each commission builds on the work of those before it, addressing the needs of their time.
Exactly. The evolution of their recommendations reflects how dynamic India's financial relationship between the central government and the states really is.
This is incredibly insightful, and I can see why understanding the Finance Commission is so important for anyone who wants to be a civil servant.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just knowing facts and figures, it's understanding how these institutions shape the country.
You got it. The Finance Commission ensures that India's financial system is fair, balanced, and meets the needs of its people.
Well, we've covered a lot already, from the quasi-judicial powers to the historical tension with the Planning Commission. It's clear this is a topic with a lot of depth.
Yeah.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
When we come back, we'll delve even deeper into the Finance Commission. We'll explore its recommendations, the impact they have on different states, and some of the criticisms it's faced over the years. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our deep dive on the Indian Finance Commission.
Ready to go even deeper. We've got the basics down, but now I want to know how these recommendations actually work in the real world. What kind of impact do they have on the ground, especially for different states?
That's a great question. Think of it this way. The Finance Commission sets the rules for how money flows between the central government and the states.
Okay.
Their recommendations decide how resources are shared, what projects get funded, and basically how each state can operate and grow.
Okay, so let's say I'm a state government. What kind of recommendations would I be hoping for?
Well, every state wants the biggest possible chunk of that divisible pool of tax revenue we talked about. More money means more freedom to invest in things like infrastructure, social programs, things that help a state thrive.
Makes sense. More money, more possibilities. But it's probably not as simple as just asking for more, right?
Yeah.
What factors does the Finance Commission consider?
Definitely not that simple. It's a complex process with lots of analysis. They look at a state's population, income levels, geographic size, even its track record of managing its own finances.
I see.
They try to balance rewarding states that are doing well financially while also supporting those that are struggling.
So rewarding good performance, but also helping out those in need. But are there ever times when states feel like the recommendations aren't fair or don't meet their needs?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, the Finance Commission is working with limited resources and trying to meet the needs of 28 states and 8 union territories, all with different priorities.
Right.
Some states will inevitably get more than others, and that can definitely cause some disagreements.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine a state with a huge population. They might argue that just using population to decide how much money they get isn't fair, because a bigger population means they need more schools, hospitals, roads, all those essential services.
I can see that point. More people, more needs.
Exactly. But then you have a state with lower income levels.
Okay.
They might feel they need more support to develop their economy and catch up to other states.
Right.
They'd argue that the Finance Commission should prioritize the states that are lagging behind.
But it's this constant balancing act.
It is. It's about finding solutions that address the immediate needs of each state, but also make sure the whole country is financially stable and growing in the long term.
This really highlights why understanding the Finance Commission is so important, especially for aspiring civil servants.
Absolutely.
It's not just about numbers. It's about how these decisions play out in real life in different states.
Exactly. A deep understanding of the Finance Commission, its recommendations, and their impact is crucial for anyone who wants to work in the Indian civil services.
You might even have to implement these recommendations one day or give advice on policies that are directly affected by them. So this is real-world stuff.
It really is. It gives you the knowledge to make good decisions, handle complex situations, and be a valuable part of the government.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential for disagreements, but what about criticisms of the Finance Commission itself? Are there any common complaints that have come up over the years?
There are definitely some recurring critiques. One concern is that the Commission's recommendations can be influenced by politics.
Like the party in power at the center might try to steer things in favor of certain states, maybe states that are politically aligned with them.
That's the worry, and it's a valid one. To make sure things stay fair, there needs to be a lot of transparency and accountability in how the Commission works.
Transparency is key. If people think there's bias, the whole system loses credibility. What other criticisms have been raised?
Another one is that the focus on dividing up the money sometimes overshadows other important parts of managing the financial relationship between the central government and the states.
What other parts?
Well, besides figuring out how much money each state gets, it's also important to figure out which level of government, central or state, is best equipped to handle certain spending.
Okay.
Think about things like education, healthcare, infrastructure. Should those be mostly funded and managed by the central government or by the individual states?
Right, so it's not just about the money itself, but also who's in charge of spending it.
Exactly. And then there's the question of borrowing power.
Borrowing power.
Yeah, states often need to borrow money for big projects, but the central government sets limits on how much they can borrow.
Okay.
Some experts think the Finance Commission should have more say in deciding those borrowing limits, taking into account each state's needs and financial situation.
So the argument is that the Finance Commission should have a broader role, looking beyond just sharing revenue to include things like deciding who spends what and how much states can borrow.
That's one perspective, and it shows the ongoing debate about balancing the financial freedom of individual states with the need for a coordinated national economic plan.
So there are no easy answers. And as India's economy and politics change, the role of the Finance Commission keeps evolving.
It does. The Finance Commission isn't working in isolation. Its decisions have ripple effects throughout the country, affecting everything from the quality of public services to how well each state's economy is doing.
It's clear that the Finance Commission is not just some random group of bureaucrats. It's a vital part of how India works, and its decisions have a real impact on all of us.
And for anyone who wants to be a civil servant, understanding the Finance Commission and engaging in these debates is essential for building a better future for India.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot here. The impact of the recommendations, the potential for conflict, and some of the criticisms.
We have.
But there's still more to explore. When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive with some final thoughts and key takeaways. Stay tuned. We're back for the final part of our deep dive into the Indian Finance Commission.
Time to wrap things up.
We've covered a lot, from its history and what it does, to the controversies and criticisms.
It's been quite a journey.
Now, let's get to the key takeaways, especially for those preparing for the UPSC exam.
Great idea.
If I'm studying for the exam, what are the absolute must-knows about the Finance Commission?
Well, first off, you got to have Article 280 of the Constitution down pat.
That's the one that sets up the Finance Commission.
Yep, it's the foundation. You need to know that article inside and out.
Okay, Article 280. Got it.
Then you should be able to explain clearly who's on the commission, what qualifications they need, and the 4 main functions they perform.
So know who they are, why they're qualified, and what they do. Like building a profile of the Finance Commission.
Exactly. And don't forget the advisory nature of their recommendations and the history with the Planning Commission, which is now NTI-Ayog.
Ah, yes, the power dynamics. How things have changed with NTI-Ayog having a more collaborative role.
Understanding that evolution is key to grasping Indian fiscal federalism.
Okay, so we've got the basics, but for the UPSC, we need to go beyond just memorizing facts, right? What kind of analytical skills should we be working on?
You need to be able to analyze the Commission's recommendations, look at their impact on different states, and discuss the criticisms and challenges.
So be ready to dive into real-world situations like the debates about how resources are allocated or concerns about political influence.
Exactly. Showing you understand the complexity, the nuances, that's what makes a difference. It shows you're not just repeating facts, but thinking critically.
This is all super helpful. I feel way more prepared to tackle any Finance Commission question that comes up in the exam.
And remember, this isn't just for exams. This is knowledge for everyone. Understanding how our financial system works, how resources are shared, the balance of power between the central government and states, it's important for all of us.
Absolutely. So, time to wrap up our deep dive into the Indian Finance Commission.
It has been a fascinating exploration.
But before we go, let's leave our listeners with something to think about.
I like that.
Okay, hit me.
With all the changes happening in India, the economic growth, the technology, how do you see the Finance Commission's role evolving in the future? What new challenges might it face? What kind of changes might be needed to keep it relevant and effective?
That's a great question, and one we should all be thinking about.
The Finance Commission, it's more than just a body created by the Constitution. It reflects India's journey toward a more equitable and prosperous future. As we move forward, understanding its role and contributing to its evolution is a responsibility we all share.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Indian Finance Commission.
We hope you found it insightful.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep asking questions. Until next time, happy learning.